Hey everybody, I guess I'm live and pardon the lighting here. As you've likely inferred from the title, I wanted to offer some thoughts about the notion of artificial intelligence and the cultural hazards that accompany the deployment of this notion at large. This is obviously been a concept in circulation for some time now, but has spiked of late in virtue of the still relatively recent release of this program, Chat GPT, which is said to be a kind of natural language recognition software with which one can, if you like, converse. That this is the phraseology, this is the language, this is the manner in which it is discussed, and even just that language gives me pause from the beginning. But as I was setting out to offer these reflections, I did a little bit of background, thinking about the notion of the robotic, the robot. So this is what Chat GPT is, in a sense, is a robot, just like you talk to bots on the internet at large, etc., etc. It's been around for a while, but I just think that it was constructed to consider the etymology of the word robot, the word robot, actually a word of comparatively recent provenance, entering the English language around the early 1920s. We can sort of locate the origin of the word with a degree of specificity because it's tied to a play by a guy, Karel Capek, and it's possible that the word robot is a Czech play. The Czech word from which we derive robot in English is robotnik, R-O-B-O-T-N-I-K. It may have been coined by Karel Capek's brother Joseph, with whom he often collaborated. Evidently, Joseph Capek may have used it in a short story. In any event, in the play, I believe Rossum's Universal Robot, I believe is the name of the play, which I've not yet read. I was just doing a little bit of this background. But robotnik comes from the Czech word robota, and then the associated verb robotiki, I believe, which means drudgery, forced toil, and so on. And you can trace it back ultimately to the old Slavonic word rabu, for slave. Interestingly, is also connected with the notion of orphanage or change in one's social status. And so we can begin to ask, what does it signify culturally that we are embracing the robotic in a very dramatic way, vis-a-vis our enthusiastic embrace of technology like Chat GPT, which is just a recent example. It seems more than coincidental that you can follow this linguistic tree down a line. And then there is, I feel, sort of historical wisdom in this recollection, that the embrace of these kinds of technologies are actually antithetical to the development of a culture of genuine freedom, emancipation, fulfillment, humanity, really. Humanity, ensoulment, if you wish to use a phrase or a concept which is sort of out of vogue, the notion of the human soul, considered in some circles passe, almost superstitious, problematic sort of forgetting, in my mind, that is. perhaps it seems like I'm meandering, but I want to just draw us back to the beginning here, where I'm not just talking about one particular program, one particular chat bot or robot. I'm talking about this idea of conversation with such an entity. It's an existent entity, is almost too dignified of a word as far as I'm concerned. And even this idea of artificial intelligence, or the idea of machine learning. To me, these are incredibly irresponsible ways of discussing with what we're dealing, even if they exhibit a shorthand utility. For one thing, while it's natural or seems natural to say things like, I'm having a conversation with Chat GPT, or I'm playing the computer. I'm playing the computer in a game of chess. I'm playing the computer in a game of Go. I'm playing a computer in a game of bridge or what have you. And it's natural enough to say, things like this, but it's actually dishonest to the reality of what is occurring. For one thing, as I see the matter, computers, robots, are actually incapable of playing games. Computers essentially are simply very sophisticated abaci or abacuses. It is a sophisticated abacus that is being set to process data or information, structure it along avenues that derive from human input. It is utterly mechanical, devoid of sentience and actual decision making. It is a mechanical structure that is bereft of innate volition. You can create the illusion of volition by structuring its processes along a certain way, but it is ultimately deterministic in character. The counterpoint will derive from the fact that in many corners of coding and so forth, many strategies which connect to the sorts of softwares and technology we were discussing, there are appeals to probabilistic mathematics. And when probability is at hand as a sort of heuristic, it will be, reasonable to suggest that there is, in the same moment, a certain indeterminacy. And the fact that there is a resolution in the face of that indeterminacy can be proffered as a counterpoint to the take which I am offering here. This is a kind of equivocation which misses the circumstance that the outcome of any mathematical function, even a probabilistic function, still is ultimately formulaic in character. And then you come to the question of why ultimately the decision, the quote-unquote decision, though it's not a decision, it's an output, would be delivered from a program when it's working with probabilities. And the answer to that has on one hand to do with, or almost entirely to do with, how the machine was programmed. Now, on the other hand, it will be said that, well, we don't really know how it's dealing with that programming because of how neural networks are structured. What do they mean by neural networks? And again, what they mean is essentially a series of data relay points that are nested amongst with each other to create recursive transmission of data points that are then collated by the machine over several iterations or cycles in order to arrive at various approximations, and those approximations become more and more precise with every iteration. This is what they mean by machine learning. You see, you're using these words like neural networks, you're using a word like learning, you're learning words like playing or conversing or talking, you're using a word like intelligence, and what these words do is distract, again, from the utterly mechanistic nature of what is happening and the utter absence of sentience and decision and experience on the hand of the machine. This is not a trivial or academic point, because what we are being tempted to do in virtue of the way this language is so broadly invoked, what we are being tempted to do is lose sight of the fact that we are greater than the machine. We are giving away the significance that is more properly accorded to human beings. This is simply the case, regardless of whether you take a theistic or atheistic or agnostic perspective on the relative significance of human beings. At the end of the day, we abide in a space of encounter, and in a space of freedom and decision, which is simply not available to the mechanisms which are being harnessed in the domains of computer science. But by falsely attributing things like decision, experience, encounter to these machines, we are pulling the rug out from our own ground in life and feeding into a deep cultural misanthropy, which is simply incommensurate with where we should be going as a culture. Whether you're talking about it on a local, on a regional, on a continental, on a global scale, this seems to me almost transparently the case. But despite that transparency, all too easily forgotten because of the distracted nature of the anthropomorphic language which we are using with respect to these technologies. This anthropomorphic language, moreover, is then leading to very damaging practices. So the fact that there is now this encouragement to use a program like Chat GPT to do research, to scour the internet, is actually giving away the exercise of human intelligence to processes that are ultimately dumb and mute in the technical sense of those terms. And what that does is conduce to a very inauspicious dependency on networks and systems which have no interest in the promulgation of general human freedom, except for a very select number of individuals at the apex of those, or the apex, the zenith, if you like, of those networks. So what is to be done? What is to be done in the face of this situation? Well, in my view, one thing to be done right off the cusp is to stop running after these technologies with such avidity, deploying these technologies with such avidity, and come back to our own life, our own life. That's what's to be done, all right? If you are in academia, or even if you're just interested in researching a topic, whatever it may be, I would implore you not to use one of these machines, regardless of its, seeming utility, regardless of the ease with which it may seem to abstain, and come back to the resources of your own being, and encourage others to do the same. Use your own mind. For heaven's sake, just don't even use a calculator as often. All right, we need to get back in touch with our own mind and our own mind's capacity. We need to get back in touch with our own native ability to remember and to realize that memory is an art. And we need to get back in touch with the fact that whereas the technological is part of human life, it should only be a fraction of human life. That is and just sort of close it back around, coming back around to where from where we roughly began. I opened with the notion of artificial intelligence. But what is intelligence? What is intelligence? Well, to answer in a manner which some may deride as colloquial, intelligence is a capacity for discernment. What is implied is awareness, experience, sentience. There is no intelligence apart from that which grows up in the clearing of our own consciousness. To speak of artificial intelligence, meaningful, would imply a very different kind of technology than that which is presently placed under the umbrella of the term. Because that kind of technology which is placed under the umbrella of the term is structurally incapable of existing in this space which I have outlined. Part of it is the language by its very nature conceals the bare bone facts of what's going on with something like AlphaGo or AlphaZero or search engine optimization and what have you. There's a tendency to impute agency to these constructs when there is no agency to be had. And what I'm saying here about intelligence goes the same for other terms which I've employed. Discussion. You can't have a discussion with Chat GPT because Chat GPT is not a sentient agent with whom you can have an exchange, a meaningful exchange on both ends from which a sort of mutual growth and transcendence can be attained. Or you can't play. AlphaGo doesn't play Go. Stockfish doesn't play chess. AlphaZero doesn't play chess. They just run code. It's just a machine running a series of mathematical instructions. All is going on there. And it is just, it can be useful for teasing out patterns, but that's all that's happening. And by allowing ourselves to be mesmerized by this, and the fact is that they're not even really recognizing patterns, because there's the human element, human subjectivity, which then takes whatever comes out of the machine and then applies to it significance. AlphaGo doesn't quote unquote know anything about Go. The fact that we can deploy the program and then derive from the program interesting move sequences in the game of Go, or whatever game you might have at hand, is the outcome of human interpretation. Another way of putting it, and then I know I got to round things out here, is that the best that these machines can do is create forms. But forms derive their significance from content. And content is what inexorably connects us to the need for an underlying awareness and agency. By allowing ourselves to be mesmerized by these machines, we are forgetting about our own agency, feeding that agency to structures and institutions and frameworks which are poisonous to truly fulfilled life, whether it's for us as individuals or as a society. So just take a breath and step away from these technologies. The fetishization of these technologies is absolutely hazardous to real human culture. And hopefully I've given you some reasons to appreciate the extreme circumspection and even the hostility that I am announcing in this reflection here. So I thank you for your time. Thank you for listening, and I will catch you guys on the flip. All right, ciao for now.